Hey everyone, and thank you for joining us for this week's episode of Peanut City Police. This week I am joined by Senior Police Officer May and Master Police Officer McLam. And this week we are here because the Super Bowl is this weekend, and while this is usually an exciting time for people to gather with friends and family, even if their team isn't playing, here in Suffolk we were reminded of a tragic incident that happened 2 years ago on Super Bowl Sunday. So could you guys take us through what happened that night 2 years ago on Super Bowl Sunday?
Sure. So Super Bowl 2023 happened on the 12th of February. Suffolk Police Department was called to a traffic fatality around 10:43 in the evening in the 6300 block of Godwin Boulevard, which is Route 10. The police department and fire department responded to a hit-and-run fatality with a pedestrian that was found in the roadway. The pedestrian was identified as Mr. Kendrick Jackson. He's 30 years old. He was believed to be struck by two vehicles, about a 2011 to 2013 Toyota Highlander, dark in color, or a 2019 to 2023 Dodge Ram pickup, which would be white in color. And both of those vehicles were last seen entering Isle of Wight.
So, Officer McLam, we're coming up on 2 years now of this incident, and this case is still ongoing. Can you talk about where things stand and really what you need from the public?
Yes, the Suffolk Police Department is coming forward asking for assistance from the public to possibly generate further investigative leads. At this point in time, the police department, we have exhausted all investigative leads, so we're really asking the citizens in Hampton Roads if they have information, no matter how minor or small, perhaps it may seem insignificant, but it may develop into develop greater leads. So what we're asking is if you come forward and provide information to the department so we can look into those leads.
Thank you.
Yeah, and as with any incident, the Suffolk Police Department wants to bring justice to the families affected by, any sort of crime. So could you touch on how important getting those tips and that information is? I know Officer McLam just mentioned something small could really turn out to be something actually big. So could you just talk a little bit more about the importance of, if you were in the area or if you saw something saying it?
Sure. So, this is a hit-and-run accident with two different types of vehicles. So, if someone passed a vehicle matching one of the two descriptions on their way home, because it is the Super Bowl, on their way home they had stopped for gas and they saw something that, maybe stood out to them a little bit, or they said, oh man, they must have hit something, or whatever have you, but didn't really think too much into it. We're asking any sort of leads, even if it doesn't match a dark description of a Highlander or a white pickup. If something didn't strike you as significant then, maybe it will now, because any lead that we can get for the vehicles that were potentially involved in this fatality, hopefully we can get justice for the family, have some closure, so that we know everything that had happened or why someone didn't come forward or they might not have known, just so that we have all the pieces together to put everything in completion instead of leaving it, we're not sure what happened because we don't have those vehicles that were in play.
If people do have tips or information, what can they do and how can they get those to Suffolk Police Department?
Well, certainly. The police department has partnership with P3 Tips, p3tips.com, and anyone with information can submit it through P3 Tips. And they can certainly also contact the Suffolk Crime Line at 1-888-LOCK-YOU-UP.
Thank you.
And Officer May, we would be remiss as a police department to sit here today and talk about a case like this with the Super Bowl coming up and not talk about the dangers of driving while impaired. So could you touch on why it's so important to have a designated driver just to plan to get home safely?
We live in a technology age, so most people have cell phones that have, apps downloadable. So there's Uber, there's Lyft. You're a phone call away from family, friends, coworkers, but you have time to set up, because you know the Super Bowl happens every year, but for every holiday or before you go out.
We would like to thank Senior Police Officer May and Master Police Officer McLam for joining us on this week's episode of Peanut City Police and for continuing to work this case until they find answers. The Suffolk Police Department is asking anyone who believes they may have information regarding this case, no matter how small or insignificant you believe it may be, to send it in through one of the methods on the screen. Our goal with all investigations handled by the Suffolk Police Department is to bring justice and closure to families and the victims. Thank you for watching. Stay safe.